I'm Alara Johnson, 28, and I just discovered that my parents secretly funded my sister's $80,000 Parisian education while telling me I wasn't deserving of financial support. Today, as my father begged me to save the family business from bankruptcy, I realized that sometimes karma takes its sweet time. The family that abandoned me when I needed them most was now desperate for the very skills they once dismissed. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you've ever felt the sting of family betrayal, this one's going to resonate. Hit that subscribe button and like this video. Trust me, you'll want to see how this family revenge drama unfolds when justice finally comes full circle. Growing up in our suburban Chicago home, the dynamic was always crystal clear. My younger sister Vanessa was the golden child, while I was the family afterthought. Our parents, Richard and Diana Johnson, successful owners of an architectural firm, never tried to hide their favoritism. Vanessa excelled in the arts, painting, music, dance, and our parents showcased her talents at every opportunity. Our living room walls displayed her artwork exclusively, and weekends were dedicated to her recitals and exhibitions. I wasn't untalented. I simply gravitated toward mathematics, coding, and business strategy, practical skills that didn't translate to proud parental displays at dinner parties. Alara's just naturally independent, my mother would explain to relatives when they noticed the disparity in attention. Vanessa needs more nurturing. This narrative became so ingrained that I believed it myself, working twice as hard for half the recognition. By high school, I had accepted my role. While Vanessa received private tutoring for her French classes and art instruction, I taught myself coding through library books and free online courses. When I won the state mathematics competition, my parents attended only because the ceremony coincided with Vanessa's school play rehearsal being canceled. They left immediately after my award presentation, missing my speech. Despite the imbalance, I loved my sister. 4 years younger than me, Vanessa wasn't calculating or manipulative. She was simply accustomed to the spotlight. We shared secrets in our bedroom at night, and I helped her with homework when our parents were busy. She'd occasionally acknowledge the unfairness, whispering, "I don't know why they treat us so differently," but neither of us had the courage to challenge the established order. College application season intensified the divide. My parents hired consultants for Vanessa's arts portfolio, though she was only a freshman. Meanwhile, I researched scholarships alone at our kitchen table, calculating financial aid possibilities, while my parents discussed Vanessa's boundless potential over dinner. When my MIT acceptance letter arrived complete with a partial scholarship, my father's reaction was tepid. "That's nice, but we can't afford the remainder, right? You'll need loans." The same day, they purchased Vanessa a professional camera for a hobby she'd developed just weeks earlier. I took out substantial student loans, worked 2 campus jobs, and graduated with honors in computer science and business. My graduation ceremony featured my parents in the back row, leaving early for Vanessa's high school art exhibition. After college, I secured a position at a technology consulting firm in Boston, while maintaining a side business developing specialized software solutions. I lived frugally, dedicating most of my income to repaying my student debt. Our family communications dwindled to obligatory holiday calls, during which my parents primarily inquired about my financial status, not out of concern, but to ensure I wouldn't need their assistance. "You've always been self-sufficient, Alara. It's admirable," my mother would say, though her tone conveyed relief rather than pride. Meanwhile, Vanessa graduated high school and announced her desire to study fine arts. My parents immediately began exploring prestigious programs cost no object. When I called to discuss a promising new project at work, my father interrupted. "That's great, but we're in the middle of planning Vanessa's college tours across Europe. Can we call you next week?" There was never a next week. Our conversations grew shorter and more infrequent. I built my life separately, creating a network of close friends who became my chosen family. I dated occasionally, but focused primarily on my career, determined to prove my worth through professional success. By 26, I had repaid my loans and saved enough to launch my own technology consulting business, specializing in financial systems for small to medium enterprises. My company, Parallel Solutions, grew steadily if unspectacularly. I purchased a modest apartment in Boston and found contentment in my independence. Then came the phone call that would unravel the family mythology I'd accepted for decades. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, and I was working late when my phone displayed my mother's number, unusual, as we typically communicated through brief text messages on birthdays and holidays. "Alara," she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Your sister has been accepted to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. We're having a celebration dinner this Saturday. It would mean a lot if you could attend." An invitation to a family event was rare enough to pique my curiosity. "I'll check my schedule," I replied, though I had no conflicting plans. Old habits of appearing busy and self-sufficient died hard. I had no idea that this dinner would expose the depth of my family's deception and set in motion events that would ultimately force each of us to confront long-buried truths. I flew to Chicago that Saturday, having booked an overpriced last-minute ticket that cost more than I'd typically spend on a month of groceries. Somewhere inside me, a small flame of hope flickered. Perhaps this celebration would finally include me as a genuine family member, rather than an obligation. My parents' house looked exactly as I remembered, impeccably maintained, with Vanessa's achievements prominently displayed. New paintings, clearly her work from college, adorned the hallway. Not a single photograph featured me alone. I appeared only in obligatory family portraits, where my smile never quite reached my eyes. "Alara, you made it," my mother greeted me with an air kiss that barely disturbed her perfectly applied lipstick. My father nodded from across the room, engaged in conversation with what appeared to be Vanessa's art professor. My sister squealed when she saw me rushing over for a genuine hug. At 24, Vanessa had blossomed into a confident young woman, her artistic sensibility evident in her stylish but bohemian appearance. "I've missed you so much," she whispered, and I believed her. Our relationship had always been complicated by our parents' favoritism, but we maintained a cautious affection. Dinner was an elaborate affair catered by an upscale service my parents certainly couldn't have afforded for any achievement of mine. Crystal champagne flutes caught the light from the chandelier as my father raised a toast. "To Vanessa, who continues to make us proud. Paris awaits your talent, sweetheart. We've always known you were destined for greatness." Glasses clinked while I took a measured sip, swallowing both champagne and the familiar sting of exclusion. Conversation flowed around me. Vanessa's professors praising her unique vision, my parents beaming with pride, acquaintances I barely recognized offering congratulations. I contributed appropriate comments when addressed, directly playing my well-rehearsed role of supportive older sister. During dessert, the conversation turned to logistics, and that's when everything changed. "We've already transferred the first year's tuition and living expenses," my father announced proudly. "80,000 should cover everything comfortably, though we're prepared to send more if needed." The number hit me like a physical blow. $80,000. More than my entire college education had cost, including living expenses. Money they claimed not to have when I needed it. "That's very generous," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the roaring in my ears. "Well, we've always prioritized education," my mother replied airily. "It's important to invest in promising futures." The implication hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. My future hadn't been deemed promising enough to warrant investment. "Funny," I said, the words slipping out before I could reconsider. "I remember being told there wasn't money for MIT." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Vanessa looked between us, confusion clouding her features. "That was different," my father said dismissively. "We had financial constraints then. The architectural firm was just gaining stability," my mother added. "And you received that partial scholarship, which covered less than half the cost," I pointed out, years of suppressed frustration threatening to surface. "I graduated with $40,000 in debt while working 2 jobs." My father set down his fork with deliberate precision. "Alara, this is hardly the time for what honesty." The filter between my thoughts and speech had dissolved completely. "You told me I needed to stand on my own, that you couldn't afford to help me. Was that true, or was I just not worth the investment?" Vanessa's eyes widened. "What do you mean? Mom and Dad always said they helped both of us equally." I laughed a short, bitter sound. "Is that what they told you, Alara? Enough." My mother's voice had taken on the sharp edge I remembered from childhood scoldings. "Your sister's achievement deserves celebration, not your resentment." "I don't resent Vanessa's achievements," I clarified, looking directly at my sister. "I resent the lie that there wasn't money to help me when clearly there was." My father pushed back from the table. "You've always been difficult, Alara. This is exactly why we made the choices we did. Vanessa appreciates our support. You just demand more." "Demand? I never demanded anything. I asked for help once for college. You refused, so I never asked again." One of Vanessa's professors cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps we should give the family some privacy." As the guests made hasty exits, Vanessa looked devastated. "I had no idea," she said quietly. "They always told me you got the same support I did." "Well, now you know," I replied, gathering my purse. "Congratulations on Paris. You'll do brilliantly, you always have." My father blocked my path to the door. "You need to apologize for ruining this evening." I met his gaze steadily. "No, I don't think I do. What I need is honesty. Why wasn't I worth supporting?" His response came without hesitation, as if he'd been waiting years to say it. "Because you don't deserve it, Alara. You've always been cold, calculating, focused on money and achievement rather than genuine artistic passion. We gave Vanessa support because her soul needs nurturing. You've always been harder. More like me than I wanted to admit." The truth, finally spoken aloud, was both devastating and strangely liberating. My mother didn't contradict him, her silence confirming her agreement. "Thank you for your honesty," I said quietly. "Enjoy Paris, Vanessa." "Don't worry about me, apparently. I've never deserved worry anyway." As I walked to my rental car, my phone buzzed with text messages from Vanessa. "Please don't leave like this. I had no idea. We need to talk." I drove back to my hotel, oddly calm, despite the seismic revelation. Years of family mythology had crumbled in a single evening, confirming what I'd suspected but never wanted to believe. I hadn't imagined the disparity in treatment. It had been deliberate, a punishment for personality traits I couldn't change. That night, I made a decision that would alter the course of all our lives. I would no longer accept the narrative they'd constructed. It was time to write my own story, one where my worth wasn't determined by their limited perception. After the disastrous revelation dinner, I returned to Boston with a clarity I'd never experienced before. The confirmation of my parents' intentional favoritism, while painful, released me from decades of self-doubt. I hadn't been imagining things. I hadn't been unworthy. I had simply been unwanted for the person I inherently was. I channeled my newfound anger into productivity. My consulting business, Parallel Solutions, became my focus with an intensity that surprised even me. I expanded my client base, hiring 2 employees to handle the increasing workload. My specialty in financial systems for small businesses proved lucrative in a market where many companies couldn't afford enterprise-level solutions but needed more than basic accounting software. Vanessa continued to text and call in the weeks following the dinner. Her messages reflected genuine distress. "I never knew they treated you that way. I'm so sorry, Alara. Please talk to me." I responded sparingly, not ready to process our relationship while still coming to terms with my parents' rejection. 6 months passed in a blur of client meetings and code development. I created an innovative financial forecasting system that attracted attention from several venture capitalists. At a tech conference in New York, I presented my software to enthusiastic reception, leading to partnership offers from 2 larger firms. Instead of accepting these offers, I negotiated licensing agreements that allowed me to maintain control of my intellectual property while significantly increasing my revenue. By my 27th birthday, Parallel Solutions had expanded to a team of 12, with offices in Boston and New York. My personal life remained secondary to my professional achievements, though I did begin dating Mark, a literature professor who approached relationships with the same thoughtful intensity I applied to problem solving. He didn't demand emotional performances or dramatic declarations. We connected through mutual respect and shared intellectual curiosity. For the first time, I experienced a relationship where my natural temperament was valued rather than criticized. Meanwhile, Vanessa moved to Paris, her social media showcasing glamorous gallery openings and picturesque cafe study sessions. She continued reaching out periodically, her messages becoming less apologetic and more informative updates about her studies, anecdotes about French culture, casual inquiries about my work. I responded with increasing frequency, our relationship gradually rebuilding on more honest ground. One evening after a particularly successful client presentation, I received an unexpected call from Vanessa. "Alara," she said, her voice tight with emotion, "I need to tell you something." "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately concerned, despite our complicated history. "It's about Mom and Dad. They've been calling me constantly asking for money." I sat down, stunned. "Money? Why would they need money from you? Apparently the firm has been struggling for years. Dad made some bad investments, and they've been living beyond their means. The Paris tuition was apparently the last straw. They took out a second mortgage to cover it. The irony wasn't lost on me. So they bankrupted themselves to fund your education while telling me I didn't deserve help with mine." "I know how it sounds," Vanessa said quietly. "But there's more. They didn't tell me this was happening. I found out because the bank called me. Apparently, Dad listed me as a loan guarantor without telling me. My professional instincts kicked in. That's illegal. Did you sign anything?" "No, that's the thing. I think he forged my signature." The bank representative started talking about my responsibilities, and I had no idea what she meant. "Have you confronted them?" I tried. "Dad said it was just a formality, and that I shouldn't worry about it." "But Alara, I'm scared. I'm a student in a foreign country. I can't be responsible for their mortgage." I pinched the bridge of my nose, processing this information. "I'll look into it. Send me any documentation the bank provided." After our call, I sat in my office until midnight, thoughts racing. The family that had deemed me unworthy of support was now potentially dragging Vanessa into financial ruin. Whatever my feelings toward my parents, I couldn't let that happen. The next morning, I called in favors from financial contacts, requesting discreet inquiries into my parents' architectural firm. What emerged was alarming. Johnson Architectural Designs was indeed on the verge of bankruptcy. They had lost several major clients to competitors, offering more innovative technology-integrated designs. My father, refusing to adapt to changing market demands, had maintained outdated practices while depleting company reserves on lifestyle expenses. More disturbing were the irregular loan applications using Vanessa's information. It wasn't just one instance. They had attempted to secure 3 separate loans, with her as guarantor succeeding with 2. I called Vanessa immediately. "You need a lawyer right now. This goes beyond a misunderstanding. They're committing fraud in your name." Her voice broke. "What do? I can't afford a lawyer." All my money goes to living expenses, and I can't leave school in the middle of the semester. The solution was obvious, though, complicated by our history. I'll help you. I'll find a lawyer specializing in identity theft and financial fraud. Alara, no, it's too much. After everything they did to you. This isn't about them, I interrupted. It's about protecting you. Within a week, I had engaged a top financial crimes attorney in Chicago and flown there to meet with my sister, who returned temporarily from Paris. The evidence was damning. Our parents had systematically exploited Vanessa's credit counting on her naivety and trust to avoid detection. When confronted with the evidence by our attorney, my parents' response was revealing. Rather than showing remorse, they expressed indignation. "We've sacrificed everything for Vanessa's future," my father argued. "These were just temporary measures until the firm recovers. She owes us this much." "She owes you nothing," I stated firmly. "And you've potentially destroyed her financial future before it's even begun." My mother turned to me, desperation, replacing her usual composed demeanor. "You don't understand, Alara. The business is everything to us. We just need time to recover." "What you need is accountability," I replied. "The bank fraud charges will proceed unless you sign legal agreements, removing Vanessa's name from all loans and accepting full responsibility for the debts." They signed the documents, fury and resentment evident in every pen stroke. As we left the attorney's office, my father called after me. "You've always been heartless, Alara. This proves it." I turned back, meeting his gaze steadily. "No, Dad, I'm not heartless. I'm just not willing to be exploited, and I won't let you exploit Vanessa either." That night, Vanessa and I had dinner alone in my hotel room, the weight of family deception heavy between us. "I can't believe they did this," she said, pushing pasta around her plate. "I always thought they were perfect parents." "They weren't terrible parents," I conceded. "Just deeply flawed ones with clear preferences." "What happens to them now?" I sighed, the reality of our family situation inescapable. "Their business is failing regardless of today's events. They've refused to innovate, and the market won't forgive that." "And us?" Vanessa asked, her question encompassing more than just our immediate circumstances. "You'll go back to Paris and complete your education, legitimately funded this time. As for me, I'll return to Boston and continue building my company." "But what about us, you and me?" I reached across the table, taking my sister's hand. "We build a better relationship than the one they designed for us. One based on truth." As I flew back to Boston the next day, I realized that while I had protected Vanessa from our parents' financial manipulation, the larger issues of our family dynamic remained unresolved. Little did I know that within months, circumstances would force a final confrontation with the past. I thought I'd finally escaped. 8 months after the fraud revelation, my business had expanded beyond my wildest expectations. A major financial institution had approached me about acquiring the rights to my forecasting software, offering a sum that would secure my financial future permanently. I was in the final stages of negotiations when I received a call from an unknown Chicago number. "Miss Johnson." The voice was unfamiliar. "This is Lawrence Reeves, your parents' attorney. I'm calling because they've authorized me to discuss a sensitive matter with you." My guard immediately raised. "What kind of sensitive matter?" "Their architectural firm is facing bankruptcy proceedings. They've exhausted all conventional financing options and are hoping you might consider providing assistance given your recent business success." The audacity was breathtaking. After decades of emotional neglect, financial abandonment, and attempted fraud against my sister, they were now asking for my help. "Mr. Reeves," I said carefully, "I believe my parents made their feelings about my worthiness quite clear. Why would they expect my assistance now?" The attorney cleared his throat uncomfortably. "They recognize that past family dynamics have been complicated. However, they're facing the loss of their life's work and hoped you might set aside personal differences. I'll consider it, I replied non-committally. Please have them send over the complete financial records for the past 5 years, including all outstanding loans and current client contracts. Miss Johnson, I'm not sure they'll be comfortable sharing that level of detail. Then, I'm not comfortable discussing assistance. Good day, Mr. Reeves. I hung up hands, shaking slightly. The universe had presented me with a perfect opportunity for revenge. I could simply decline and watch their business collapse, a justified response to years of rejection. Yet, something deeper than vengeance stirred within me curiosity about the business itself. That evening, I researched Johnson Architectural Designs thoroughly. Despite its financial troubles, the firm had an impressive portfolio spanning 3 decades. The designs were technically sound if stylistically outdated. With proper technological integration and modernized business practices, the company had potential for revitalization. I called Mark, whose steady perspective had become my anchor during emotional turbulence. They've asked for your help after everything they've done, he asked, incredulous, after I explained the situation. Apparently, desperation outweighs pride, I replied. The question is what I do with this. What do you want to do? I considered the question carefully. Professionally speaking, their business has untapped potential. Personally speaking, I'm torn between justified rejection and a chance to finally prove my worth by succeeding where they're failing. Those sound like your father's metrics, Mark observed quietly. Proving worth through business success. His comment struck me like a revelation. I had spent years rejecting my parents' dismissal while simultaneously internalizing their value system. Success had become my substitute for the approval I'd never receive. You're right, I admitted. But that doesn't change the fact that I could help them on my terms. The next morning, I called Reeves back. I've considered the situation. I'm willing to review their financial documents, but I won't commit to anything until I've completed a thorough analysis. 2 days later, I received password-protected files containing Johnson Architectural Designs' complete financial history. The picture was worse than I'd anticipated. My parents had systematically withdrawn company profits to fund their lifestyle and Vanessa's education, leaving the business hollowed out. They'd neglected technology upgrades, staff development, and marketing, relying on reputation alone to attract clients. Most concerning were the loans, 5 in total, with aggressive interest rates and accelerated repayment schedules. They owed $420,000, with the first balloon payment of $85,000 due in 3 weeks. Without that payment, bankruptcy was inevitable. I booked a flight to Chicago and texted my parents directly. I'll be in town tomorrow to discuss the business situation. Meet me at your office at 10 a.m. Their response was immediate and revealing. We knew you'd help. You've always been the practical one. Not grateful. Not apologetic. Still framing my nature as merely practical, useful in crisis, but less valuable than Vanessa's artistic temperament. I arrived at their office the following morning to find it nearly deserted. Where once a dozen architects and designers had worked, now only 3 remained, their desks islands in an empty floor plan. My parents waited in the conference room, my father pacing, while my mother sat rigidly in her chair. Elara, my father, began extending his hand formally. Thank you for coming. I shook his hand briefly. Let's be clear, I'm here to understand the situation, not to make promises. For the next 2 hours, I questioned them methodically about client relationships, design processes, and financial decisions. Their answers revealed a business model frozen in the 1,990 seconds, resistant to digital tools, sustainable design principles, and collaborative approaches now standard in the industry. Your firm is failing because it's obsolete, I concluded, closing my laptop. You've refused to evolve. My father bristled visibly. We've maintained quality and craftsmanship while others chase trends. The market disagrees, I replied evenly. Quality isn't enough if it doesn't meet current needs. So you're refusing to help, my mother said, disappointment edging her voice. I didn't say that. I'm evaluating options. My father leaned forward. What options? We need $85, 0 inches, 3 weeks, or we lose everything. I met his gaze steadily. I'm considering acquiring the company. Stunned silence filled the room. My father recovered first, his face flushing with indignation. Acquiring. This is our legacy, not some distressed asset for your portfolio. It's a failing business that needs complete restructuring, I countered. If you want my help, these are my terms. I'll provide the $85,000 as initial investment for 60% ownership. I'll assume all outstanding loans and implement a comprehensive modernization plan. Absolutely not, my father snapped. I founded this company. I won't become a minority stakeholder. Then declare bankruptcy, I replied, gathering my materials. Those are your options. My mother touched my father's arm cautiously. Richard, we should consider this. We don't have alternatives. He shook her hand away. There's always Vanessa. She has access to her trust fund now. The mention of a trust fund, something I'd never known existed, momentarily staggered me. Vanessa has a trust fund. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. My mother spoke carefully. It was established by your grandparents for both of you, but we reallocated your portion for business expenses during the recession. The revelation should have hurt, but instead it merely confirmed what I already knew. So you misappropriated my inheritance too. Interesting. It wasn't like that. My father protested weakly. It's exactly like that, I countered. And no, Vanessa won't be your financial savior this time. She's aware of your previous attempts to exploit her finances. My father's expression hardened. Fine. What exactly would your structuring entail? I outlined my vision rebranding as Johnson Parallel Designs, integrating my financial forecasting software for project management, implementing virtual reality presentation tools for clients, and hiring younger architects versed in sustainable materials and digital collaboration. You destroy everything we've built, my father argued. I'd save what's worth saving and replace what isn't, I corrected. The Johnson name stays. Your design philosophy remains influential, but the business practices evolve. After hours of tense negotiation, reality prevailed over pride. My parents agreed to my terms with one additional stipulation: they would remain as consultants for 3 years before full retirement. As I prepared to leave, my father asked the question that had clearly been troubling him. Why would you help us at all after everything? I considered my answer carefully. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I see value in this company that you've failed to develop, and perhaps because I want to prove something to myself. What's that? My mother asked softly. That I deserved investment all along. I called you guys out in Chicago for some intense family drama that just went down. Would you believe my parents just asked for my help to save their failing business? The same parents who told me I didn't deserve support while giving my sister $80 kelvins for Paris. The tables have completely turned, and I'm weighing whether to rescue their company or let karma take its course. Have you ever had to decide between justice and mercy with family who hurt you? This story's about to get even more complicated as I consider becoming my parents' boss. Drop a heart emoji if you've ever had to make a tough decision about toxic family members. And subscribe to see what choice I make, because this revenge or redemption moment is coming full circle. The acquisition process was finalized within a month, facilitated by my parents' desperation and my ready access to capital. I established a transitional headquarters in Chicago while maintaining my Boston office, flying between cities weekly. My life became a carefully orchestrated schedule of business meetings, staff interviews, and strategic planning sessions. The first major change came in personnel. I retained the 3 remaining staff members but supplemented them with a team of innovative young architects recruited from top sustainable design programs. My father watched these new hires with thinly veiled disdain, particularly Zoe, a brilliant MIT graduate whose computational design approach represented everything he had resisted. "These kids rely too much on computers," he complained during our weekly management meeting. "Architecture is about human intuition, not algorithms." "It's about both," I replied evenly. "Their technical skills complement your experience. You should be mentoring them, not criticizing." My mother adapted more readily, finding common ground with the newcomers through her interest in materials and textures. She began attending their digital rendering sessions hesitantly at first, then with growing enthusiasm, as she discovered how technology could enhance rather than replace traditional design elements. The company's financial situation required immediate stabilization. I implemented my proprietary forecasting software to track project profitability with unprecedented precision. Each design decision was now evaluated not just for aesthetic merit, but for cost implications and timeline impact. My father bristled at these constraints, accustomed to pursuing artistic vision regardless of budget. "We're not building widgets," he argued after I questioned an expensive custom feature for a corporate headquarters project. "Our reputation is built on distinctive design. Our survival depends on profitability," I countered. "The feature stays if you can justify the cost to the client or find offsetting savings elsewhere." He couldn't, and the design was modified, the first of many such confrontations that gradually established new operational parameters. The most significant transformation came through our client approach. Where my parents had relied on established relationships and reputation, I implemented aggressive digital marketing and community engagement. We hosted sustainable design workshops, created virtual reality presentations of proposed projects, and established a thought leadership blog featuring insights from both veteran and new team members. These initiatives attracted attention beyond our traditional client base. A major hospital system approached us about a green redesign of their facilities. A tech incubator commissioned an innovative workspace combining collaborative areas with privacy pods. A university requested proposals for a carbon-neutral student center. Each new project represented a direction my parents would never have pursued independently. Each success validated my vision while implicitly critiquing their resistance to change. 4 months into the transition, we landed our most prestigious opportunity yet, a competition to design a mixed-use development, emphasizing community integration and environmental responsibility. The project would transform an abandoned industrial site into housing, commercial space, and public amenities. "This is exactly what we need," I announced during our strategy session. A showcase project demonstrating our new capabilities. My father seemed genuinely engaged for the first time since the acquisition. "The site has historical significance. We should preserve elements of the original factory within the new design." I recognized the merit in his suggestion. "Agreed. Let's pair you with Zoe on the conceptual approach. Your historical perspective, combined with her sustainability expertise, could give us a competitive edge." The unlikely partnership between my tradition-bound father and the forward-thinking Zoe yielded unexpected synergy. His knowledge of architectural history informed her technological innovations, creating a proposal that honored the past while embracing the future. Their design incorporated the factory's brick facade and steel support beams into a modern structure, featuring solar integration, rainwater harvesting, and community garden spaces. When our proposal was selected as a finalist, my father called me personally, our first non-business conversation since the acquisition. "This collaboration approach you've implemented," he said hesitantly, It's producing better results than I expected. The acknowledgement, however, limited, represented significant progress. That's the point of diversity in perspectives. No single approach has all the answers, including mine, he admitted quietly. I see that now. As the business stabilized, I began addressing deeper organizational issues, particularly the gender disparities my parents had perpetuated. Their firm had historically hired few women in senior roles, maintaining the male-dominated culture typical of architectural practices in my father's generation. I established clear advancement pathways, mentoring programs, and flexible work arrangements, supporting work-life balance. These policies attracted talented professionals previously overlooked in traditional recruitment processes, further diversifying our team and approach. 6 months after the acquisition, Johnson Parallel Designs had transformed from a failing traditional firm into an emerging leader in sustainable technology-integrated architecture. Our financial position had stabilized, our project pipeline was growing, and our reputation was evolving, from established to innovative. Throughout this professional transformation, my personal relationship with my parents remained complicated. Our interactions were primarily business-focused, the emotional distance maintained by mutual unspoken agreement. They operated as consultants rather than parents, and I functioned as CEO rather than daughter. Vanessa, completing her studies in Paris, followed our progress through regular video calls. Her perspective offered valuable insights into our family dynamic. It's weird, she observed during one late-night conversation. They respect you now, but they still can't admit how wrong they were. Respect is enough, I replied, though we both recognized the rationalization. Is it? They're seeing firsthand what you can accomplish when properly supported. Don't you want them to acknowledge that I considered her question seriously? Their acknowledgement doesn't validate me anymore. My success does that. Still, she persisted, there's something unresolved between you all. I can feel it, even from another continent. She was right, of course. Beneath our professional interactions lay decades of unaddressed rejection and favoritism. The business transformation had altered our power dynamic but hadn't healed our fundamental relationship. That realization was fresh in my mind when my parents requested a private meeting outside our regular business schedule. They suggested dinner at their home, the first such invitation since the disastrous Paris celebration. I arrived with carefully managed expectations, determined to maintain professional boundaries regardless of the setting. My mother greeted me with uncharacteristic warmth, leading me to the dining room, where a simple meal awaited rather than the elaborate spread typically arranged for important occasions. My father was already seated at the table, his usual commanding presence diminished somehow. He stood awkwardly as I entered, gesturing toward a chair opposite his. The table settings were noticeably subdued, regular dinnerware rather than the fine china reserved for important occasions. I wondered if the choice was deliberate, an unconscious acknowledgement that this was a family conversation, not a performance. "Thank you for coming," my mother said, serving a pasta dish I recognized from childhood. My favorite, though I couldn't remember the last time she'd prepared it for me specifically. We ate in uncomfortable silence for several minutes before my father finally spoke. "The mixed-use project is proceeding well. The Planning Commission approved our preliminary designs yesterday." "I know," I replied. I received the email notification. Another silence stretched between us until my mother intervened. "We didn't invite you here to discuss business, Alara." My father set down his fork with deliberate precision. "No, we didn't." He drew a deep breath, his discomfort evident. "We asked you here to acknowledge certain things." I maintained my composure, waiting without prompting or assisting. This conversation needed to come from them, not me. "The company transformation has been successful beyond our expectations," he continued. "Your methods, while different from what we would have implemented, have proven effective." "That's not what this is about," my mother interjected gently. "Richard, please." He nodded, visibly struggling. "What your mother means is that we owe you an apology. A significant one." I hadn't expected this direct approach and found myself momentarily speechless. "We treated you unfairly," he continued. "For years, we justified our favoritism toward Vanessa with rationalizations about your independence and her needs. Working alongside you these past months has forced us to confront the truth." "Which is," I prompted when he paused. "That we were wrong," my mother answered. "We withheld support from you based on faulty judgments about your character and potential. We called you cold and calculating when you were simply logical and thorough. We failed to appreciate your gifts because they didn't align with our preconceptions," my father added. "And when you succeeded despite our lack of support, we resented rather than celebrated your achievements." Their admission was both validating and disorienting. After decades of gaslighting about the reality of their favoritism, hearing them acknowledge it explicitly was almost surreal. "What prompted this revelation?" I asked, maintaining emotional distance despite the unexpected vulnerability they were displaying. My father gestured vaguely. "Working under your leadership. Watching how you've transformed our failing company with exactly the qualities we dismissed: your analytical thinking, your technological aptitude, your strategic vision." "And conversations with Vanessa," my mother added. "She's been quite direct about her perspective on our family dynamics since the trust fund incident." I nodded, unsurprised that my sister had continued advocating behind the scenes. "I appreciate your acknowledgement. It means something to hear you recognize the reality of our history." "Is that all it means?" my father asked, a note of disappointment evident. "Just something I considered," my response carefully. "What did you expect? That one conversation would erase decades of rejection? That I'd suddenly feel like your daughter rather than your business associate?" "We hoped it might be a start," my mother said softly. "A start toward what exactly?" My father leaned forward. "Toward a real relationship. One based on who you actually are, not who we incorrectly assumed you to be." The sincerity in his voice was unfamiliar. My father had always projected certainty rather than vulnerability. This hesitant, almost pleading tone represented a fundamental shift in our dynamic. "I don't know if that's possible," I replied honestly. "Trust once broken doesn't automatically reset with an apology, no matter how sincere." "We understand that," my mother said. "We're not asking for immediate forgiveness. Just an opportunity to try a different approach moving forward." I took a sip of water, buying time to process their request. The business partnership had been professionally satisfying but emotionally sterile. Did I want more? Was I willing to risk disappointment again? "I'll consider it," I finally said. "But I need to be clear about something. I'm not the same person who desperately sought your approval. My worth isn't determined by your recognition anymore." "We know," my father acknowledged. "That's part of what we've come to respect." As the evening concluded, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and uncertainty. Their apology represented a victory of sorts, confirmation that the problem had always been their perception, not my value. Yet it also opened possibilities I'd long since stopped considering: a family relationship based on mutual respect rather than conditional approval. The following weeks brought subtle shifts in our interactions. My parents began engaging with me beyond strictly business matters, inquiring about my relationship with Mark, sharing anecdotes from their own lives, occasionally referencing shared memories from my childhood. These overtures remained tentative, laden with the awkwardness of people learning to relate in entirely new ways. The most significant change came in their relationship with Vanessa. When she visited during semester break, our parents made conscious efforts to equalize their attention between us. These attempts sometimes felt forced, but the intention behind them was genuine. One evening during a family dinner that would have been unimaginable months earlier, my father raised his glass in an impromptu toast to both my daughters whose different strengths make them equally extraordinary. The sentiment was simplistic, perhaps even clumsy, but it represented a fundamental shift in perspective that had once seemed impossible. Vanessa caught my eye across the table, her slight smile acknowledging the significance without overemphasizing it. Later that night, as we shared coffee in my hotel room, Vanessa asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Are you going to forgive them?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Does it matter? We've established a functional relationship." "It matters," she insisted. "Not for them, for you. Carrying resentment takes energy you could direct elsewhere." Speaking from your extensive psychological expertise, I teased gently. "Speaking as someone who loves you and wants you to be free from old pain," she replied seriously. "They failed you, Alara. That's established fact. The question is whether holding on to that failure serves you now." Her insight struck deeper than I wanted to admit. The business acquisition had given me professional victory and validation, but emotional resolution remained elusive. Perhaps because I was still measuring myself against their former rejection, still proving my worth instead of simply living it. As the one-year anniversary of the acquisition approached, Johnson Parallel Designs had exceeded all reasonable expectations. Our revitalized company had secured major contracts, established a reputation for innovative, sustainable design, and achieved profitability well ahead of projections. We were shortlisted for an Architectural Innovation Award, specifically recognizing our successful blend of traditional craftsmanship and technological advancement. The mixed-use development now under construction had become our signature project, featured in industry publications and environmental sustainability forums. My father and Zoe had developed their initially unlikely partnership into a powerful creative collaboration, with each pushing the other toward solutions neither would have discovered independently. The business transformation was complete and undeniable. The personal transformation remained a work in progress, halting, imperfect, but gradually evolving towards something none of us had experienced before, a relationship based on reality rather than expectation, on who we actually were rather than who anyone thought we should be. I didn't know if complete reconciliation was possible or even necessary. What mattered was that the truth had finally been acknowledged, creating space for authentic connections to potentially develop. The family mythology had been dismantled, replaced by a more honest narrative where favorites weren't predetermined and worth wasn't conditionally assigned. In that space of possibility, I found something unexpected, not the approval I'd once desperately sought, but the freedom to stop seeking it altogether. My parents' recognition of my value didn't create that value, it had always existed with or without their acknowledgement. That realization, more than any business success or family reconciliation, represented the true victory. You've been with me through the most incredible transformation, not just saving my parents' company, but finally hearing them admit they were wrong about me all along. This conversation has been so raw and honest. If you've ever had to rebuild a relationship that seemed beyond repair, let me know in the comments. What boundaries did you set? Did the relationship heal completely or just evolve into something different? I'm still figuring out if forgiveness is possible after decades of rejection. Hit that subscribe button to follow this journey, because family healing is never simple, and I could really use your wisdom as I navigate this new chapter. 1 year and 3 months after taking control of my parents' failing business, I stood at the podium accepting the Urban Design Innovation Award for our mixed-use development. The project had transformed not just an abandoned industrial site, but our entire company's trajectory, and in many ways our family's relationship. "This award recognizes collaborative excellence," I said during my acceptance speech. "Innovation rarely comes from a single perspective, but from the intersection of diverse viewpoints. Johnson Parallel Designs embodies that principle, blending traditional architectural wisdom with technological advancement, historical appreciation with future vision. From the audience, my parents watched with expressions I'd never seen, directed toward me before, genuine pride, unmarred by comparison or qualification. Beside them sat Vanessa, home from Paris after completing her degree, her artistic sensibility now contributing to our marketing materials and client presentations. The company that once teetered on bankruptcy now stood as an industry leader. The family that once operated on rigid favoritism had begun the challenging work of authentic relationship. Neither transformation was complete or perfect, but both represented profound evolution from where we'd started. After the ceremony, as we celebrated with the team, my father approached me privately. "I never properly thanked you," he said quietly. "For saving the company, you've acknowledged that many times." "Not for the company," he clarified. "For forcing us to see you clearly. It's a gift we didn't deserve but desperately needed." The sincerity in his voice reflected our new reality, one where truth was valued over comfortable fictions, where worth wasn't determined by conformity to expectations. "Sometimes," I replied, "the family we build is better than the one we inherit. But sometimes, with enough honesty and effort, they can become the same thing." As I look back on this journey, from family outcast to business savior to something approaching genuine acceptance, I'm struck by the power of persisting in your own truth, even when those closest to you can't or won't see it. Have you experienced something similar in your own life? That moment when people who dismissed you finally recognized your value? Share your story in the comments below. If this tale of family betrayal, personal resilience, and karmic justice resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps me share these complex family stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. Consider sharing this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by family recognition. Sometimes the people who should see your value most clearly are the last to acknowledge it. Thank you for following this chapter of my journey. Remember that sometimes the most powerful form of justice isn't revenge, but success on your own terms. I'll be back next week with another family story that explores the complicated reality of blood ties and chosen connections. Until then, believe in your worth even when others don't.